We're following breaking news on the tensions between Canada and the United States. U.S. President Donald Trump has abruptly reversed course on a new trade relationship.
I mean, this is a win-win for both sides. And this, I think, this came about because there was both politics at play and business at play.
Canada has never expressed to the world that they have the best deal, the second best deal in the world. The best deal in the world is Mexico, because remember, they have USMCA, which means 85% of the Canadian economy comes into the United States for zero.
So here's the thing about live television. It creates a permanent, unedited record in real time. And on this historic night, it became a devastating weapon in an ongoing international trade war. Former President Donald Trump delivered what was supposed to be a final, crushing ultimatum to Canada on live television. But before the broadcast window had even closed, the entire strategy backfired in spectacular fashion. This was not a failure that took days to unfold in diplomatic cables or weeks to manifest in economic data. It happened while the cameras were still rolling, while the teleprompter was still running, and while network control rooms were managing the live feed. It was a strategic miscalculation of epic proportions, and it caught the attention of the world's most famous investor, Warren Buffett, who watched from Omaha and delivered a surgical, merciless verdict before midnight. The American pressure campaign had previously enjoyed success by heavily managing the media environment. Early tariff announcements and escalating threats dominated the news cycle, successfully framing the narrative for the American public. In this frame, the United States was the reasonable authority executing legitimate trade pressure, while Canada was painted as a stubborn, recalcitrant neighbor that would inevitably bow to overwhelming economic reality. However, this domestic narrative ignored a quiet, massive counter-strategy. For months, the Canadian government had been meticulously building an alternative economic foundation, establishing $500 billion in alternative trade relationships, finalizing pipeline capacities to Atlantic and Pacific tidal water ports, and organizing a highly coordinated allied response involving 7 governments on 4 continents. All of this technically detailed information had been quietly fed to financial analysts and policy reporters, building a massive body of verifiable record that was waiting to be unleashed. The turning point came when a source within the American communications infrastructure leaked the general outline of Trump's live address to Canadian officials 72 hours in advance. This gave the Canadian Prime Minister's office enough lead time to draft, review, and approve a precise 8-sentence rebuttal. At exactly 6:47 p.m. Eastern Time, 43 minutes before Trump even stepped to the podium, those 8 sentences were loaded into the global wire service release system, waiting for a single command. In a windowless secure communication suite on Sussex Drive in Ottawa, senior Canadian officials watched 5 live network feeds simultaneously, alongside a countdown clock calibrated to the exact length of the expected speech. When Trump reached the climax of his live address, he delivered his ultimatum in an escalating register, stating 3 fateful sentences. Canada has no alternative, Canada has no leverage, and Canada has no choice. He declared his demands on dairy market access, digital services taxes, and pharmaceutical pricing non-negotiable, imposing a strict 7-day deadline. But the moment those 3 sentences left his mouth, they collided with an information environment that had already done its homework. To anyone watching who knew the facts, the ultimatum landed not as a show of strength, but as a series of claims that were completely and publicly wrong. The response from Ottawa was executed with unprecedented broadcast precision. Exactly 8 seconds after Trump finished speaking, and just as the American networks cut to their first commercial break, the Canadian government pushed the release command. The 8 sentences hit every major newswire simultaneously. The first 2 sentences firmly established that Canada had heard the address and that its position remained unchanged. The next 3 sentences systematically demolished Trump's core premises by citing specific, verified data from the public record: the newly established pipeline capacities to tidal water ports, the $500 billion in diversified non-American trade relationships, and the newly synchronized allied coordination. The response concluded by stating that Canada remained open to dialogue on the basis of mutual respect, rejected ultimatums, and delivered a devastating 4-word final blow. The record speaks otherwise. The timing of this release completely paralyzed the White House communications apparatus. Before network anchors could even finish their opening sentences of post-address analysis, the Canadian rebuttal was already flashing across the chyrons at the bottom of the screen. Within minutes, network correspondents were reading the 8 sentences live on air. The largest television audience this trade dispute had ever generated watched as analysts used Canada's concrete numbers to pick apart the speech they had just witnessed. It took the American administration 4 hours and 17 minutes to issue a formal response, a delay that, in the fast-paced world of live television, represented an absolute communications collapse. When the White House finally responded, it weakly attempted to dismiss the Canadian release as a pre-planned political stunt on a timer. But this characterization completely backfired. It only served to highlight that the Canadian government was vastly more prepared, disciplined, and in command of the facts than the team that had initiated the broadcast. The financial fallout was instantaneous and severe. Because institutional investors process new data with incredible efficiency, they didn't wait for morning analysis or White House clarifications. They read the specific factual citations in the Canadian Wire release and immediately reevaluated the trajectory of the entire trade war. Before the New York session even opened, $17 billion in American market capitalization vanished in the pre-market trading session, heavily impacting export sector stocks. This financial chaos prompted Warren Buffett to break his silence. Speaking to a longtime financial journalist before midnight, the 94-year-old billionaire noted that while he had seen many people make consequential mistakes throughout his 6 decades in business, the hardest ones to recover from are those made publicly on camera. Buffett explained that live television is an unforgiving medium, and when you deliver absolute claims that your opponent can instantly contradict with verified data, you create a credibility event rather than a manageable news cycle. He emphasized that credibility events compound over time and force a structural reassessment of who is actually in control of a situation. Buffett pointed out that the pre-market plunge was proof that institutional money had already sided with Canada's version of the facts, noting that his own cross-border positions were caught up in that $17 billion drop. His ultimate verdict was clinical and final. The ultimatum was over before it was finished because Canada was simply more prepared, and the live television record would reflect that permanently. The political and international consequences of the broadcast continue to ripple outward. In the 48 hours following the address, the fragile congressional coalition supporting the tariff campaign began to fracture. 4 senators who had previously shown signs of shifting were joined by 3 additional legislators from tariff-exposed districts, all issuing public calls for a fundamental recalibration of the administration's approach. One prominent lawmaker openly used the word counterproductive, signaling a deep structural crack in the political support for the trade war. Globally, allied foreign ministries in major capitals like London, Paris, Tokyo, and Berlin updated their diplomatic models to reflect that the American administration lacked an adequate command of the facts for the public forum it had chosen. Even Beijing weighed in, issuing a pointed 2-sentence statement emphasizing the critical importance of factual precision in international economic dialogue. The live broadcast transformed a standard political disagreement into a permanent reference point against which all future actions will be measured. If you want to stay ahead of these rapidly shifting global events and learn how to protect your own hard-earned financial future from the chaotic fallout of international trade wars, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. Don't miss out on our upcoming deep dive analyses. Subscribe today to keep your retirement security firmly on track.